Hagen, it's me, your favorite neighborhood NLPMP, and let's talk about some of the terrible things that my narcissistic mother did to destroy my life and my sense of self. Number one, making constant comments about my body, good and bad. My mom was always criticizing my body, too fat, too skinny, how my boobs were, how my stomach was, how my butt was, how I looked in clothes. Good or bad, whether she liked it or hated it, she was always making comments on my body. And what this did was feed a super crazy hyper awareness and insecurity about my body, which mirrored the insecurity that she had about her own body. Number two, calling me gross and weird. Anytime I did something that my mom thought was outside of the norm, or time I wore something she didn't like, or made a friend she didn't like, or chose a boyfriend, she would basically go, ugh. It's gross, it's disgusting. She did this when I wore black clothes, when I hung out with people who were in bands and things like that. It was a disgust because I wasn't conforming. Number three, constant comparisons. She constantly compared me to both herself and to others. If I did really well in school, or I was really good at something like music or reading or writing, she would compare it to herself. She would instantly swoop in when I got writing awards, and she would make comments like, well, I was a writer. I always wanted to write books. I wrote books before you were born. The same applied with the negative comparisons. If I did something she didn't like or disappointed her expectations in some way, she would make negative comparisons meant to put me in a role and also make me feel bad. So the greatest example was my dad. You're just like your father, which of course was like saying you're the devil in my house. Number four, overly critical. My mom was crazy critical to the point where it wasn't helpful. It was meant to be destructive. And the best example that I always give is in elementary school, when you would get made to write one-page little stories or these little tiny essays about the books you were writing, I would bring them to her to get her help with them, and she would basically redline everything in it like it was a college thesis. And she wouldn't really help me. She would just redline all the stuff that she had a problem with as an assistant English teacher. And then I would go to school the next day turning in this document that my mom had made me put college level addendums in. And yeah, it didn't go well. Humiliation, pretty standard. Fourth grade choir auditions. I worked up the song and my courage, and I finally went and sang it in front of my mom before I was going to go and do the audition the next day, and she laughed at me. And she told me I sounded like a racist word, clown, and then I didn't sing in front of anyone for almost 20 years. She was a show choir star, supposedly, in high school, so track that one. Oh, this one was my mom's specialty. Number six, a combination of control and humiliation. She was big on this one. The real way she liked to do it is she would not allow me to buy clothes from any of the shops that any of the other kids shopped in, like all that Abercrombie, Aeropostale, American Eagle, all that stuff was very popular when I was growing up. Instead, she would take me to JCPenney's, spend twice as much money on clothes that she would pick out for me, which by and large were pretty ridiculous, like a red leather suit a la Michael Jackson in Thriller. Yeah, there's basically a lot more, but the video would be too long, so let me know if you want me to do a part 2 on horrible things my narcissistic mother did to undermine my sense of self and my life and my relationships. Follow for more.